Abusia na no ada ebeka ya NPP aban wo so omo de share by share suani bia omo modern na omo ama laptop because a world has become a global village and the digital world and so laptop na bibia papa now and the former minister of education Dr. Adutwum PA joy news na or granting interview no more ebusan say schools need be nyane ade no say there be NPP are buying under another for the administration. They provided everything. No more HR. Asat ebra NPP. Ekotwa ba or more free abaimono. Now 200 schools and over. And more are receiving or more laptops. Their council or more edekwa kakra asat now ye kasano egusua ekontie bia school bi ede maya nyese bia ban no kind watra omutu ho anamon and he hopes how Nigeria will end this year ban they are not going to seize or keep those laptops like car ye no mo be manako na no kra no wasase na ni die kire hwe se eno so betimi awie kama abusia wonim se education there hotel kodura no in America NPP aban omo ebomo modern pa even NDC ni kra no etimi testify to it say wo my ade anje say ya de sombo yentie Dr. Adutwum sema waka edituja
on the wasi and move on to great things.
The WASI performance is not merit because you speak to some of the teachers and they tell you the quality in the senior high schools has dropped hugely.
How do you tell me quality has dropped when the same standards are being used in the assessment and they're doing better?
We're buying
quality has dropped. No, it's not past questions. Quality has dropped. How do you define quality? Let me tell you one thing. There's a difference between, if you know education, we have what is called criterion reference test and a norm reference test. When you go to WASI, the exams measure mastery. So, when students are getting better performance, it cannot be that performance has dropped. If you are using a norm reference exam, you grade on the curve. So there are some years where somebody will get 70 and get A1. And if they're non-reference test, some years somebody will get 60 and still get A1 because all of them didn't do well. So if we are using a non-reference test, you can make that assumption. Because you see, standards are fun, but they are still getting the same grade because it's a non-reference exam. They are grading on the curve. But WASI is a criterion reference exam. It measures mastery and performance is compared from year to year. When you look at BEC is a non-reference exam. You grade on the curve. WASI is not a non-reference exam.
Okay.
So when the quality falls, it will immediately reflect in the performance of the exam. But if I'm a teacher, teaching at a category C school, my assumption about standards have fallen may come from the fact that in the previous year, certain students were not allowed to come there, right? Because there was a cutoff. So I was not dealing with a certain group of students because they were not allowed to come in. Now with the removal of the cutoff, there are some students that are going to come there that may not have the same level of proficiency as those who are used to teach. Consequently, I may be right by saying the number of students, the students that I'm teaching, their levels are a bit low this time compared to those I was teaching the previous years. Because the previous years, you were getting only those with 28 or better. Now you can get somebody of 38. And that is why Ghana Education Service came up with a unique policy called intervention courses. What the intervention course is meant to do is to enable students whose performance are subpar to enroll in courses that are not necessarily high school level. So if it's mathematics and English, they are literally repeating the junior high school mathematics and English. That is what is done around the world. So essentially, the student who come in and is subpar is not left to sink or swim. but it's giving additional coursework in mathematics and English for them to catch up. So when you do that very well, then what happens to you is that those students who may not be at the level that student used to be years back still have an opportunity to improve on themselves because they might have gone to a school where they did not get the support that they needed. So you cannot do a cookie cutter mass education without intervention for those who are struggling. So for example, a student walk into a school, he's doing home economics, he walk into a management and living class, the teacher sees that this student cannot read proficiently. In other jurisdictions, you go to the intervention English class so that your English reading proficiency will move up before you may be asked to then take the full scope of courses. So if you don't...
Was this really what was happening, or it was on paper? Because some of the students even spent 3 weeks in school, 6 weeks, and they have to go back home.
No, it's not.
The double track. We had stories of students who would report to school 2 months, they have to go back.
No, never true.
Really?
You see, yes. You see, I wish I have I will send you the calendar for you to take a look at it. The calendar is still being implemented. It's not true. Let me tell you. This was, and I always talk about slash and burn politics. We, politicians, are our worst enemies. We will take an issue, bastardize it for Ghanaians to hate it. And unless people come to appreciate it, they will still go by what my other colleague from Parliament was saying about it. Let me take a few minutes of your time. I don't know the time that we have. But you see, double track never was invented in Ghana. I was fortunate enough to have taught in the US system. In the year 1994, high schools in California moved from 3 years to 4 years with no facilities for the 4th year. Then they resorted to what we call double track, called year-round schools. All that you do is this. Instead of one cohort of students coming to the school, we divide them into 3. 1 stays at home, 2 go to school at any point in time. With that arrangement, schools that used to bring in 1,000 can now do 1,500. But in order for the 3 cohorts to fit, you make the school day longer and the school year shorter. So for example, instead of around the world, the standard is 180 days. I think GS last year was doing 185 days, for example, for students who are on single track. And by the way, as I speak with you, close to 70% of all students are on single track. All schools.
Close to 70%.
Are on single track. Schools are on single track. What does that mean? What it means is that they don't do double track. They don't do double track. When we started, it was about close to 50-50. About maybe 49 doing double track. Now, with more schools being built, more classrooms being built in the existing schools, the number had gone down. A school like Tamasco, used to be double track, is no longer double track. Okay? So the whole idea is that to get more students and also to reduce class sizes, what you do is divide the population into 3, have 2 of them there at a time, 1 at home. When you do that, you have increased enrollment, and you're also able to reduce even class sizes as a result of that intervention. But how do you make up for the lost hours since the school year is shorter? What you do is that you make the school day longer. Because in education, we talk about instructional hours and not instructional days. So instead of students going to school at 8 and closing at 2 or 2:30, now if they go at 8, they close at 4. So when you do that, you make up for the lost days with more hours. That is the basic underpinning of how you implement a double track regime.
Okay.
So, and in Ghana, the interesting thing was that double track was not implemented, unlike in the US where we did it based on lack of space in the schools. In the Ghanaian context, the major issue is lack of space in desirable schools. because we allow parents to choose.
So there were some schools that had the space, but students weren't there?
Yes, because so there are a number of category C schools, people don't desire to go there. And we don't, because we don't have community-based secondary education. So you don't force people to go to a certain school. In other jurisdictions where there are community-based secondary education, you go to the school in your community. So in those cases, there will not be any school for the most part left where there are spaces and you don't have enough students. There are a number of schools across the country at the category C level with spaces. But you also have students and parents who want the best for their children, rightly so. I want Presec and I want Presec now. I want Wesley girls, I want Wesley girls now. What does that mean? The double track then allowed the opportunity for parents to have a shot at some of these high-performing schools. So if you look at double track schools, as I speak with you, there are many category A and limited number of category B schools that are double track. The rest of them are no longer double track. The children go to school at the beginning, all of them together, and they vacate all of them together. And that is the norm in Ghana, as I speak with you.
But my question was to the effect that it got to a point parents couldn't plan. Because the GDS will release the timetable to the students are supposed to report. The next few moments, the students are supposed to come back home.
No, I will tell you this. When you do this calendar issue, sometimes there can be some problem, no doubt about it. So I won't sit here and say there was no challenge. But I'm just saying how the system was working for the most part was what I have described to you. So for example, in some schools,